The Zenithians recoiled in terror as news of humanity's entry into the galactic war spread like wildfire across the cosmos. For centuries, the Arcturians had fought a losing battle against their Zenithian foes, their advanced technology proving insufficient against their enemies' ruthless tactics. Now, in a desperate bid for survival, the Arcturians had turned to Earth for aid. Pollux, the Arcturian emissary, stood before the United Nations in New York City, his otherworldly presence captivating the assembled world leaders. Cameras flashed and reporters jostled for position as the alien diplomat addressed the packed chamber. "Esteemed representatives of Earth," Pollux began, his voice resonating with urgency, "we come to you in our darkest hour. The Zenithians threaten not only our civilization, but the stability of the entire galaxy. We offer you our technological marvels in exchange for your military prowess." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices as nations debated the merits and risks of involving Earth in an interstellar conflict. Stephen Cox, the newly appointed UN Secretary General, rose to speak. His deep voice cut through the din, silencing the room. "Colleagues, this is more than a call to arms. It is an opportunity for humanity to prove its worth on the galactic stage. We have the chance to shape the future of not just our world, but countless others." After hours of heated discussion, the UN reached its decision. Earth would join the war. Military bases across the globe sprang into action, retrofitting tanks, jets, and warships with Arcturian technology. Soldiers trained day and night, preparing for combat in zero-gravity and alien environments. Stephen Cox, now appointed as the human liaison to the Arcturian fleet, boarded Pollux's ship along with Earth's finest military minds. As the vessel prepared for departure, Cox gazed out at the stars, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We're ready," he declared to Pollux, who nodded solemnly. Unbeknownst to the humans, their involvement had sent shockwaves through the Zenithian High Command. Intercepted transmissions detailing Earth's brutal history of warfare and unparalleled strategic thinking caused panic among Zenithian leaders. They had gravely underestimated the potential impact of these newcomers. Pollux, observing the Zenithians' reaction, approached Cox with trepidation. "Stephen, I fear we may have made a grave error. Your species' capacity for violence, it surpasses anything we've encountered. The galaxy may not be prepared for the full might of humanity unleashed." Cox placed a reassuring hand on Pollux's shoulder. "We'll respect the rules of engagement, my friend. Trust in us." But privately, Cox knew that humanity would do whatever it took to secure victory. The stakes were too high for half measures. As the human-augmented Arcturian fleet approached the front lines, both allies and enemies braced for impact. The Zenithians scrambled to fortify their positions, while the Arcturians watched their new allies with a mixture of hope and fear. Humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest challenge yet, ready to demonstrate its formidable combat capabilities on an interstellar scale. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see just how terrifying humans could be when they joined the war. The human-augmented Arcturian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Orion Nebula, a swirling mass of gas and dust that marked the front lines of the Zenithian conflict. Stephen Cox stood on the bridge of the Arcturian flagship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the positions of both allied and enemy forces. "Status report," Cox demanded, his voice cutting through the tense silence. An Arcturian officer responded, "Zenithian defensive line detected, sir. They've adopted a standard formation, just as our intelligence suggested." Cox nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Perfect. Implement Operation Hydra." The Arcturian crew exchanged confused glances as Cox's orders were relayed throughout the fleet. Ships began to break formation, scattering into seemingly random patterns that defied conventional space combat tactics. Pollux approached Cox, concern evident in his large, almond-shaped eyes. "Stephen, what are you doing? This formation leaves us vulnerable to—" "Trust me," Cox interrupted, his gaze never leaving the display. "They won't know what hit them." As the Zenithian ships moved to engage, the human-led fleet suddenly coalesced into multiple strike groups, attacking from angles the enemy never anticipated. Earth fighters, retrofitted with Arcturian technology, darted between larger vessels, exploiting gaps in the Zenithian defenses. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was clear. The Zenithian line crumbled under the relentless assault of human ingenuity, combined with Arcturian firepower. As the last enemy ships retreated or surrendered, a cheer went up from the Allied fleet. News of the victory spread rapidly across subspace channels. On Earth, the response was electric. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, eager to join the war effort. Factories retooled to produce weapons and vehicles compatible with Arcturian tech, working around the clock to support the war effort. As the conflict intensified, Cox pushed for more aggressive tactics. In the Cygnus system, he introduced a strategy that left both allies and enemies stunned. Small, agile Earthships, piloted by the most daring human volunteers, conducted lightning-fast raids on Zenithian positions. Captain Sarah Chen, leading one such squadron, maneuvered her ship through a debris field, closing in on a massive Zenithian cruiser. "Strike team, on my mark," she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. 3, 2, 1, mark! The Earthships emerged from the debris, unleashing a barrage of Arcturian-enhanced weapons. Before the Zenithian vessel could respond, Chen's team had already vanished back into the cover of wreckage and dust. These hit-and-run tactics proved devastatingly effective. Within days, a key Zenithian outpost in the Cygnus system fell to the Allied forces. However, not all of Cox's decisions were met with universal approval. After a particularly brutal engagement, Pollux confronted Stephen in his private quarters aboard the flagship. "Nuclear weapons, Stephen?" Pollux's voice quivered with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You've violated every intergalactic convention we hold sacred." Cox turned to face his alien counterpart, his expression hard. "Those conventions weren't winning you the war, Pollux. We're saving lives in the long run by ending this quickly." "At what cost?" Pollux demanded. "The radiation will render those worlds uninhabitable for centuries." "A necessary sacrifice," Cox replied coldly. "One that will make the Zenithians think twice before continuing this war." As the conflict escalated, Earth began to change. Arcturian technology filtered down to the civilian sector, revolutionizing industries across the globe. Medical breakthroughs extended human lifespans, while new energy sources eliminated dependence on fossil fuels. Yet this rapid advancement came with its own set of problems. Nations that had hesitated to join the war effort now found themselves left behind, creating a new global divide. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with demonstrators demanding equal access to alien technology. Unbeknownst to the Arcturians or their human allies, the Zenithians had begun to seek alternative solutions to their losing war. In a secret facility deep within the neutral zone, Vex, a high-ranking Zenithian diplomat, prepared for a clandestine mission to Earth. "Remember," his superior cautioned, "offer them anything they want. We must drive a wedge between the humans and the Arcturians." Vex nodded solemnly before boarding his stealth ship, bound for Earth. Meanwhile, Cox's relentless push against the Zenithians led to an unexpected discovery. A human reconnaissance team, operating deep in enemy territory, intercepted communications about a Zenithian superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems. In a secure briefing room, Cox laid out his plan to a group of top human and Arcturian military leaders. "We have one chance to stop this weapon before it's operational," he explained, pointing to a holographic map of the secret Zenithian facility. "I propose a joint human-Arcturian strike team to infiltrate the base and either capture or destroy the weapon." As the briefing concluded, Pollux lingered behind, watching Cox with a mixture of admiration and fear. The Arcturian diplomat couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something they couldn't control. In the privacy of his quarters, Pollux began drafting plans to neutralize Earth's military capabilities, should the need arise. The stage was set for a mission that would change the course of the war. As human and Arcturian forces prepared for their daring assault on the Zenithian superweapon, tensions simmered beneath the surface of their alliance. The galaxy watched and waited, knowing that the outcome of this conflict would reshape the balance of power for generations to come. The hum of the captured Zenithian scout ship's engines filled the cabin as Stephen Cox led his joint human-Arcturian strike team towards their target. The asteroid loomed ahead, its jagged surface concealing the heavily fortified Zenithian facility. Cox's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display, mapping out their approach vector. "We're entering the debris field now," announced the Arcturian pilot, his slender fingers dancing across the control panel. "Zenithian patrol detected at coordinates 227 by 84. Cox leaned forward, his mind racing. "All stop. Kill the engines and switch to passive sensors only." The human soldiers exchanged glances, their training kicking in as they prepared for potential combat. Major Marcus Steele, a grizzled veteran of Earth's special operations, nodded approvingly at Cox's quick thinking. "Sir," Steele whispered, "we could use the debris as cover. If we time it right, we can slip past their sensor sweeps." Cox considered for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. Everyone, brace for evasive maneuvers." The ship lurched as it drifted into the asteroid field. Chunks of rock and metal scraped against the hull, setting everyone's teeth on edge. The Arcturian crew members visibly tensed, unused to such risky tactics. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they navigated the treacherous field. Finally, the Zenithian patrol passed by, oblivious to their presence. A collective sigh of relief filled the cabin. "Impressive," murmured Talax, the Arcturian technology expert. "Such adaptability. We would never have attempted such a maneuver." As they approached the facility, Cox outlined the plan. "We split into two teams. Humans will focus on sabotage, Arcturians on intelligence gathering. Steele, you're with me. We'll take point and clear the way for the others." The scout ship touched down in a secluded ravine, and the strike team disembarked. They moved swiftly through the airless environment, their suits compensating for the lack of atmosphere. Steele led a small group ahead, disabling perimeter sensors with practiced efficiency. Inside the facility, the team encountered their first real resistance. A squad of Zenithian guards rounded a corner, weapons raised. Without hesitation, Steele and his men sprang into action. The humans moved with a fluid grace that belied their bulky environmental suits, neutralizing the threat before the Arcturians could even raise their weapons. "Clear," Steele reported, his voice tight with adrenaline. As they penetrated deeper into the complex, the true nature of the Zenithian superweapon became apparent. Holographic displays showed a massive device, its core pulsing with exotic energy. "By the stars," gasped Talax, studying the readouts. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a gravity manipulation device capable of collapsing entire star systems." Cox's teeth gritted. "Then we need to shut it down, now." The team pushed forward, but tensions began to rise. The humans' aggressive tactics clashed with Arcturian caution, leading to near misses with Zenithian security forces. "We need to slow down," insisted Vela, an Arcturian strategist. "This recklessness will get us all killed." Steele bristled at the accusation. "If we don't move fast, this weapon will be operational before we can stop it. Sometimes you have to take risks." Cox intervened before the argument could escalate. "Both approaches have merit. We'll adapt as needed. Now focus on the mission." As they neared the weapon's core, alarms began to blare. The facility went into lockdown, blast doors slamming shut around them. "We're out of time," Cox announced. "Steele, what are our options?" The Major studied the exotic matter reactor powering the device. "Conventional sabotage won't work, but if we reverse the polarity, we might be able to use the weapon against itself." Talax's eyes widened in alarm. "That could create a black hole. It would consume the entire star system." Before Cox could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Wait! There's another way!" A Zenithian scientist emerged from a hidden alcove, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm Dr. Zara. I'm part of a resistance movement. Opposed to this weapon's use, I can help you shut it down safely." Cox leveled his weapon at the newcomer, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I have the fail-safe codes," Dr. Zara replied calmly. "But we must act quickly. Any attempt to disable the weapon will trigger a cascade reaction throughout the facility." The sounds of approaching Zenithian forces echoed through the corridors. Cox found himself at a crossroads, the weight of multiple star systems resting on his decision. "Sir," Steele urged, "we need to act now. My way is risky, but it's guaranteed to destroy the weapon." Talax countered, "But at what cost? We cannot justify the destruction of an entire system." Cox's mind raced, evaluating the options before him. Trust an unknown Zenithian scientist, or risk creating a black hole? The choice would shape not only the outcome of this mission, but the future of the entire conflict. With Zenithian reinforcements closing in and alarms blaring all around them, Cox made his decision. He turned to Dr. Zara, his expression resolute. "Show us how to shut it down," he commanded. "But know this, if you betray us, you'll wish we had created that black hole instead." Dr. Zara nodded grimly and moved towards the control panel. As she began inputting the fail-safe codes, Cox signaled to his team to take up defensive positions. The air crackled with tension as human and Arcturian alike prepared for the fight of their lives. The fate of civilizations hung in the balance as fingers flew across alien keyboards, the countdown to either salvation or destruction ticking relentlessly onward. Cox's eyes locked with Dr. Zara's, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he nodded sharply. "Do it! Talax, assist her. Steele, secure our perimeter." As Dr. Zara's fingers flew across the alien control panel, Cox kept his weapon trained on her. The Zenithian scientist worked with practiced efficiency, her movements precise and deliberate. "Accessing primary control systems," she reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Initiating fail-safe protocols." Talax watched in fascination, his own hands hovering over a secondary console. "Remarkable. The complexity of this system is beyond anything we've encountered." A thunderous explosion rocked the facility, nearly throwing them off their feet. Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, we've got company. Heavy assault units incoming." Cox gritted his teeth. "Hold them off, Major. We need more time." The sounds of battle echoed through the corridors, the sharp crack of human weapons mixing with the high-pitched whine of Zenithian energy rifles. Steele and his team fought with brutal efficiency, their Earth combat training proving invaluable in the close quarters of the alien facility. Dr. Zara's eyes widened as new alerts flashed across her screen. "They're trying to override the shutdown remotely. I need to reroute through secondary systems." "Do whatever it takes," Cox ordered. "We're not leaving until that weapon is offline." Outside the facility, space itself seemed to erupt in chaos. The Zenithian fleet arrived in force, their massive ships emerging from hyperspace in a dazzling display of light and energy. They immediately engaged the human Arcturian forces, filling the void with weapons fire and explosions. Aboard the ESS Thunderchild, Admiral Jackson Hawk stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical holodisplay. "Status report," he barked. His XO responded crisply. "Zenithian fleet outnumbers us 3-1, sir. They're forming a blockade around the asteroid." Hawk's eyes narrowed as he studied the enemy formation. "They're protecting something big down there. All ships, execute maneuver Delta 7. Let's show these aliens what Earth can do." The human fleet moved with surprising grace, their ships darting between asteroid chunks and debris. Arcturian vessels followed in their wake, providing supporting fire with their advanced energy weapons. Hawk opened a channel to his entire battle group. "This is Admiral Hawk. We just received a priority transmission from Colonel Cox. There's a ground team down there taking out a Zenithian superweapon. Our job is to get them out. Hit the enemy hard and fast. Use the debris field for cover. Earth is counting on us. Hawk out." The space around the asteroid erupted in furious combat. Human ships unleashed salvos of missiles, their warheads enhanced with Arcturian technology. Zenithian energy shields flared and buckled under the assault. Inside the facility, Cox and his team worked feverishly to complete the shutdown sequence. Sweat beaded on Dr. Zara's forehead as she input the final commands. "It's done," she announced. "The weapon is powering down." A moment of relief washed over the group, quickly shattered by a new series of alarms. The facility shuddered violently, and emergency lights bathed the control room in an eerie red glow. What's happening? Cox demanded. Dr. Zara's fingers danced across the console, her expression grim. The failsafe. It's triggering a cascade reaction. The entire power grid is overloading. Talax's eyes widened in horror. If we don't stop it, the gravitational distortions could tear this entire system apart. Cox made his decision in an instant. Steele, begin evacuation procedures. Get all non-essential personnel to the extraction point. He turned to Dr. Zara and Talax. You two, with me, we're going to finish this. As Steele led the bulk of the team towards the rendezvous point, Cox and the others raced deeper into the facility. They passed through corridors lined with exotic machinery, the air thick with the scent of ozone and burning circuitry. They reached a massive chamber housing the weapon's power core, a swirling vortex of energy contained within a series of interlocking fields. Dr. Zara immediately set to work on a nearby console. We need to bleed off the excess energy gradually, she explained. Too fast, and we risk a catastrophic overload. Cox nodded, keeping his weapon ready as Talax assisted the Zenithian scientist. Minutes stretched into an eternity as they worked, the facility continuing to shake around them. Suddenly, a piece of the ceiling came crashing down, nearly crushing Talax. Cox pulled him to safety at the last second. We're out of time, he growled. What's our status? Dr. Zara's face was a mask of concentration. Almost there. Just a few more seconds. The chamber doors burst open, and a squad of Zenithian troops poured in. Cox and Talax returned fire, desperately trying to buy more time. Done! Dr. Zara shouted over the din of battle. The reaction is stabilizing. Cox didn't hesitate. Move! Back to the extraction point! They ran through the crumbling facility, dodging falling debris and pockets of escaping energy. Cox's mind raced as they sprinted, processing the enormity of what they'd accomplished, and the cost. As they neared the rendezvous, Cox's communicator crackled to life. Admiral Hawk's voice cut through the static. Colonel Cox, this is Thunderchild. We've broken through the Zenithian lines, but we can't hold this position long. What's your status? On our way to the extraction point now, Cox replied between breaths. Be advised, we have a Zenithian defector with us. High-value asset. They emerged onto a landing pad just as the first human dropships touched down. Steele and his team provided covering fire as they rushed aboard. Cox did a final head count, ensuring Dr. Zara was secure before giving the signal to lift off. As the dropships ascended, Cox watched the Zenithian facility collapse in on itself. A localized gravitational distortion began to form, pulling in debris and nearby enemy ships. The space around the asteroid warped and twisted, a testament to the awesome power they'd narrowly contained. Admiral Hawk's voice came through once more. All ships, execute emergency jump to Rally Point Alpha. Move it, people! The human and Arcturian fleets disengaged, their engines flaring as they pushed to escape the growing anomaly. From the dropship's viewport, Cox watched as the Thunderchild unleashed a final barrage, covering their retreat. As they accelerated away from the chaos, Cox turned to Dr. Zara. I hope the information you're carrying was worth all this. The Zenithian scientist met his gaze steadily. Colonel, what I discovered in that facility goes far beyond this war. There are forces at work in this galaxy that neither humans nor Zenithians fully understand. Before Cox could press for details, the dropship's pilot called out, Preparing for emergency jump. All hands, brace for transit. The stars elongated around them as they leaped into faster-than-light travel. Cox leaned back in his seat, his knees going weak from the implications of Dr. Zara's words. As the adrenaline of battle faded, he realized that this mission may have been just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would reshape the galaxy in ways none of them could have imagined. As the dropship settled into its docking bay aboard the Thunderchild, Cox's mind raced with the implications of their success and the challenges that lay ahead. The following week saw a dramatic shift in the tide of war. News of the Zenithian superweapons destruction spread rapidly through subspace communications, igniting a spark of hope across human and Arcturian territories. Earth's involvement in the conflict, once seen as a desperate gamble, now commanded respect and admiration from allies and enemies alike. Admiral Jackson Hawk stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild, surveying the holographic display of their latest engagement. Human and Arcturian ships moved in perfect synchronization, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible just months ago. "Status report," Hawk called out, his voice carrying the weight of command. His XO responded promptly. "Sir, Zenithian forces are in full retreat. We've reclaimed the Proxima Centauri outpost and established a forward operating base in the Sirius system." Hawk nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Excellent. Prepare for our next push. We'll hit their supply lines at Epsilon Eridani." As the Thunderchild led the charge, its innovative tactics became the gold standard for Alliance operations. Hawk's daring raids crippled Zenithian logistics, forcing them to abandon hard-won territories and retreat to more defensible positions. Meanwhile, aboard the ESS Horizon, Earth's premier research vessel, Dr. Zara worked tirelessly alongside human and Arcturian scientists. The Zenithian defectors' insights proved invaluable, leading to breakthroughs in shield harmonics and energy weapon-focusing techniques. Dr. Emily Chen, lead human researcher, marveled at a successful test firing. "Incredible. With these modifications, we've increased shield penetration by 300%. Dr. Zara nodded, her alien features set in concentration. "Yes, but we must be cautious. The Zenithians will adapt quickly. We need to stay ahead of their countermeasures." As the Alliance pressed its advantage, the true cost of the war became increasingly apparent. Reports flooded in of inhabited worlds caught in the crossfire, their surfaces scarred by weapons of unimaginable power. In a secure conference room aboard the Arcturian flagship Harmony, tension filled the air. Arcturian Elder Vox addressed the gathered human and Arcturian leaders, his normally melodious voice tinged with concern. "While we appreciate the effectiveness of human military doctrine, we cannot ignore the collateral damage. The destruction of Nebulon Prime and its 15 billion inhabitants weighs heavily on our conscience." Stephen Cox, recently promoted to general, leaned forward. "We understand your concerns, Elder Vox. That's why we're proposing a new initiative, a galactic summit to explore diplomatic solutions." The room erupted in murmurs and heated discussions. Cox raised his hand for silence. "We've already begun preparations. The summit will be held at Starpoint Station, orbiting Vega Prime. We're extending invitations to neutral races to act as mediators." As plans for the summit took shape, Earth itself grappled with the consequences of its newfound galactic prominence. In New Shanghai, gleaming skyscrapers stretched towards the heavens, their designs incorporating Arcturian anti-gravity technology. Citizens moved about in vehicles that hovered effortlessly above the ground, a testament to humanity's rapid technological advancement. But not all nations shared in this prosperity. In the crowded streets of Lagos, protesters clashed with police, demanding access to the alien technologies that had transformed other parts of the world. "The future belongs to all of us," a young woman shouted, her voice amplified by a crude energy projector. "We will not be left behind while the elite reap the benefits of the stars." As social unrest grew, the United Nations convened an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York, their faces grim as they grappled with the challenges of this new era. UN Secretary-General Amara Okoro addressed the assembly, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "We stand at a crossroads. Our actions now will determine not just the future of our planet, but our place in the galactic community. We must find a way to move forward together, or risk tearing ourselves apart." Even as diplomatic efforts gained momentum, a new threat emerged from the shadows. On a secret Zenithian military installation, a group of high-ranking officers gathered in a dimly lit chamber. Fleet Commander Zarkon, his face illuminated by the harsh glow of holographic displays, addressed his fellow purists. "Our leaders have grown weak. They speak of negotiation while our enemies push ever closer to the heart of our empire. We cannot allow this to continue." A chorus of agreement echoed through the room. Zarkon's eyes narrowed as he continued. "The upcoming summit is an opportunity. We will show the galaxy the true strength of the Zenithian people. No other race deserves to share in the glory of the cosmos." As the purists plotted, General Cox assembled a special task force aboard the Thunderchild. Major Marcus Steele stood at attention, his battle-hardened face a mask of tenacity. Cox laid out their mission, his voice low and urgent. We've detected increased purist activity in the Deneb sector. Your team will infiltrate their stronghold and gather intel on their plans for the summit. This is strictly covert. We can't risk open conflict so close to the negotiations. Steele nodded, his mind already running through tactical scenarios. Understood, sir. We'll get it done. As the task force prepared for their dangerous mission, Admiral Hawk positioned the Thunderchild and its battle group near the Vega system. The sleek warships took up defensive formations around Starpoint Station, their presence a clear message to any who might threaten the peace process. On the Arcturian homeworld of Lumina, a group of young activists gathered in a public forum. Their leader, Zara Lynn, addressed the crowd with passion. For too long we have hidden behind our pacifism, while others shape the destiny of the universe. It is time for Arcturians to take a more active role in cosmic affairs. We can learn from the humans' adaptability without sacrificing our core values. Her words sparked heated debate among the assembled Arcturians, challenging centuries of isolationist tradition. As the date of the summit drew near, tensions reached a fever pitch across the galaxy. On Earth, in Arcturian space, and throughout the territories touched by the war, all eyes turned toward Vega Prime. The actions of Cox, Hawk, and their teams in the coming days would determine not just the outcome of the conflict, but the future of humanity's role in a vast and dangerous universe. Aboard the Thunderchild, Cox stood before a viewport, gazing out at the star-filled expanse. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, each decision carrying the potential for triumph or catastrophe. As he contemplated the challenges ahead, a comm alert drew his attention. It was time to brief the diplomatic team on their final approach to Starpoint Station. With a deep breath, Cox straightened his uniform and turned away from the viewport. Whatever the future held, he knew that humanity's journey among the stars was only just beginning. Cox turned away from the viewport, his mind already shifting to the task at hand. As he strode towards the briefing room, the Thunderchild hummed with activity. Crew members rushed through corridors, making final preparations for their arrival at Starpoint Station. The diplomatic team waited expectantly as Cox entered. He surveyed the group, a mix of seasoned Earth politicians and Arcturian envoys. We're approaching the Vega system, he began. Our primary objective is to secure a lasting peace, but we must remain vigilant. The Zenithians may have agreed to these talks, but not all factions support this move. As Cox outlined their strategy, millions of kilometers away, Major Marcus Steele and his task force were executing a high-risk infiltration. Their stealth shuttle slipped undetected through Zenithian space, its advanced cloaking technology masking their approach to a desolate moon orbiting a massive gas giant. Steele's voice was barely above a whisper as he addressed his team. Intel suggests the Purists have a base hidden somewhere on this rock. Our job is to find it, gather information, and get out without being detected. The team moved swiftly across the moon's barren surface, their suits compensating for the low gravity. As they crested a ridge, Corporal Zhang held up a hand. Sir, I'm picking up energy readings. Faint, but definitely artificial. Steele nodded. Good work. Let's move in, but stay alert. The source of the energy signature turned out to be a concealed entrance, seamlessly integrated into the moon's craggy landscape. With practiced efficiency, the team bypassed the security systems and slipped inside. The Zenithian base was a hive of activity. Steele and his team moved silently through maintenance shafts and unused corridors, gathering intel. In a secure communication room, they struck gold. Major, you need to see this, Sergeant Reeves whispered, gesturing to a holographic display. Steele's eyes widened as he took in the information. The Purists were planning to launch an attack on Starpoint Station during the peace talks, using a hijacked Zenithian battlecruiser. We need to warn Admiral Hawk, Steele said. But first, let's gather everything we can on their plan. Back in the Vega system, Admiral Jackson Hawk stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild, overseeing the fleet's deployment. As a gesture of good faith, he had ordered all ships to power down their main weapon systems. Sir, his XO reported, all ships are in defensive formation around Starpoint Station. Weapons are powered down as ordered. Hawk nodded, his eyes fixed on the massive space station that loomed before them. Starpoint was a marvel of engineering, a neutral ground where representatives from across the galaxy could meet in safety and comfort. As the Earth delegation docked, Stephen Cox led his team through the station's grand corridors. The air was thick with tension as representatives from various races eyed each other warily. A tall, willowy figure approached Cox, its skin a pale blue and its eyes deep pools of apparent wisdom. "General Cox," the being said, its voice melodious, "I am Ambassador Zorn of the Cephalons. We are honored to serve as mediators for these crucial talks." Cox shook Zorn's hand, noting the ambassador's firm grip. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We're grateful for your people's assistance in this matter." As they walked towards the main conference chamber, Zorn's antennae twitched slightly. "I sense great hope for these talks, General, but also unease. There are currents of fear and mistrust that we must navigate carefully." Cox nodded grimly. "Peace is never easy, Ambassador, but we're committed to seeing this through." The conference chamber was a masterpiece of diplomatic design. A massive circular table dominated the center, with holographic displays hovering above it. As delegates took their seats, Cox noticed several Zenithians entering. Their leader, a stately figure named Zalvor, caught Cox's eye and gave a respectful nod. Ambassador Zorn called the summit to order, his resonant voice filling the chamber. "Esteemed delegates, we gather here today with the hope of ending a conflict that has caused immeasurable suffering across our galaxy. Let us approach these talks with open minds and a genuine desire for peace." As the negotiations began, Cox couldn't shake a feeling of unease. His eyes scanned the room, noting the positions of his security team. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Unbeknownst to Cox, several of the station's maintenance workers and minor diplomatic staff were purist agents in disguise. They moved through the station with practiced nonchalance, waiting for the signal to act. Meanwhile, on Earth, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. In Lagos, protesters had overwhelmed police barricades, storming government buildings. Similar scenes played out in cities across the developing world. In a secure bunker beneath New York, UN Secretary-General Amara Okoro received a disturbing report. "Madam Secretary, we're detecting widespread cyber attacks against nations with access to Arcturian technology. Power grids are failing, communication networks are going dark." Okoro's face was grim as she processed the information. "This couldn't have come at a worse time. We need to contain this situation before it undermines our position at the peace talks." Back on the Thunderchild, Admiral Hawk received an urgent communication from Major Steele. As he listened to the report, his face grew increasingly concerned. "You're certain about this, Major?" Hawk asked. "Affirmative, sir," Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "The Purists are planning to attack the station with a hijacked battlecruiser. We're en route to intercept, but we'll need backup." Hawk faced a critical decision. Powering up the fleet's weapons could be seen as an act of aggression, potentially derailing the peace talks, but leaving their defenses down could result in disaster if the Purist attack succeeded. As Hawk weighed his options on the station, Ambassador Zorn sensed a shift in the emotional undercurrents of the gathered delegates. His empathic abilities detected a growing tension, a sense of fear and anticipation that seemed out of place. Zorn leaned close to Cox, speaking in a low voice. "General, something is amiss. I sense a great disturbance approaching. We must act quickly to preserve these talks." Cox's hand moved to his concealed communicator, ready to alert his team, but before he could act, the chamber's main doors slid open, and a group of maintenance workers entered, their faces set with unwavering willpower. As Cox's security team moved to intercept them, the workers reached into their tool belts. The peace talks teetered on the edge of chaos, with the future of the cosmos hanging in the balance. Balance. In that instant, Cox's trained instincts took over. He signaled to his security team with a subtle hand gesture, and they moved swiftly to intercept the incoming group. "Everyone, remain calm," Cox announced, his voice steady and authoritative. "We're just experiencing a minor maintenance issue." As Cox's team engaged the disguised Purists, he discreetly activated his secure communicator. "Admiral Hawk, we have a situation. Possible purist infiltration on the station. Initiate Protocol Omega. Aboard the Thunderchild, Admiral Hawk received Cox's message with a grim expression. He turned to his bridge crew. Power up our defensive systems. Make it look like a routine check. As the Thunderchild's systems hummed to life, Hawk's tactical officer reported, Sir, long-range sensors are picking up an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. Hawk's eyes narrowed. That must be the hijacked battlecruiser. Alert Major Steele's team. They're our best chance at stopping this before it escalates. Millions of kilometers away, Major Marcus Steele and his task force were already in motion. Their cloaked shuttle glided silently through space on an intercept course with the purest battlecruiser. Remember, Steele briefed his team, our primary objective is to disable the ship's weapons and secure the bridge. Speed and stealth are crucial. As they approached the massive Zenithian vessel, Corporal Zhang guided their shuttle into a blind spot near the aft section. With practiced precision, the team activated their magnetic boots and made the precarious crossing to an external airlock. Once inside, Steele split his team into two groups. Alpha Team, with me. We're heading for the bridge. Beta Team, take out those weapon systems. As they moved through the ship's corridors, the sounds of hurried footsteps and urgent Zenithian voices echoed around them. Steele held up a fist, signaling his team to halt, as a group of crew members rushed past their hiding spot. They're preparing for battle, Sergeant Reeves whispered. We need to move faster. Steele nodded, leading his team deeper into the ship's bowels. Back on Starpoint Station, Ambassador Zorn's antennae twitched violently. He leaned close to Cox, his voice barely audible. General, the emotional atmosphere has shifted dramatically. I sense great hostility and fear. Cox nodded imperceptibly. I know, Ambassador. We're handling it. Can you help me move some of the key delegates to safer areas? We can't risk a panic. As Zorn subtly guided important figures away from potential danger zones, Cox's security team engaged in a silent, brutal struggle with the purest infiltrators in the station's maintenance corridors. On Earth, the situation was spiraling out of control. Cities across the globe plunged into darkness as power grids failed under the onslaught of sophisticated cyber attacks. In a fortified command center beneath the Pentagon, General Evelyn Stryker surveyed the chaos with steely purpose. Initiate Project Aegis, she ordered. Within seconds, a revolutionary defense system powered by Arcturian technology sprang to life. Streams of data flowed across holographic displays as the system not only repelled the attacks, but began tracing them to their sources. We've got them, a young lieutenant announced triumphantly. Attacks are originating from multiple locations, sending coordinates now. General Stryker allowed herself a small smile. Excellent. Alert our allies and prepare for a coordinated counteroffensive. Aboard the Purist battlecruiser, Major Steele and his team fought their way through increasingly heavy resistance. The narrow corridors echoed with the sound of energy weapons and the cries of wounded soldiers from both sides. As they approached the ship's main reactor, Corporal Zhang took a glancing hit to her shoulder. I'm fine, she grunted, but Steele could see the pain in her eyes. Making a split-second decision, Steele ordered, Zhang, Kowalski, get back to the shuttle. The rest of us will finish this. With a reluctant nod, Zhang and Kowalski retreated, covering their comrades as they pushed forward. In the Vega system, Admiral Hawk watched tensely as the Purist ship entered sensor range. He opened a channel to his fleet. All ships assume standard patrol formation. Power weapons, but keep them offline. We can't risk appearing aggressive. The Thunderchild and its escort vessels moved into position, ostensibly performing routine maneuvers. But Hawk knew they were now the only thing standing between the Purists and their target. On the station, Cox's security team cornered the last of the Purist agents near the life support controls. A fierce firefight erupted, energy bolts scorching the walls as both sides took cover behind equipment. We can't let them reach those controls, Cox shouted over the comm. Take them down! In the conference chamber, oblivious to the battle raging nearby, the peace talks reached a critical juncture. The moderate Zenithian leader, Zalvor, hesitated as he prepared to sign the ceasefire agreement. Something feels wrong, Zalvor muttered, his compound eyes scanning the room suspiciously. Ambassador Zorn stepped forward, his calming presence filling the room. Honored delegates, let us not allow fear to cloud our judgment. The path to peace is often fraught with uncertainty, but it is a path we must walk together. As Zorn spoke, Dr. Zara burst into the room, her eyes wild with excitement. General Cox, Ambassador Zorn, I've made a breakthrough. She quickly explained her discovery about the ancient alien technology and its potential to create a localized subspace field. If we can implement this, it could neutralize energy weapons, she concluded breathlessly. Cox's mind raced with the implications. He relayed the information to Hawk, hoping it might provide the edge they needed. On the Purist ship, Steele and his remaining team members finally reached the bridge. They were met by a towering Zenithian figure, General Krax, the Purist leader. Humans, Krax spat, his voice dripping with contempt. You dare to interfere with the destiny of a superior race? Steele didn't waste breath on a reply. He launched himself at Krax, his combat training pushing his body to its limits as he engaged the Zenithian warrior in hand-to-hand combat. As Steele and Krax traded blows, the rest of the team worked frantically to disable the ship's controls. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as systems began to fail. In the Vega system, Hawk watched in horror as the Purist ship opened fire on the station. Without hesitation, he ordered the Thunderchild to intercept, placing his ship between the attackers and their target. Activate the subspace field, Hawk commanded. The experimental technology sprang to life, creating a shimmering barrier around the Thunderchild. As the Purist weapon's fire struck the field, it dissipated harmlessly, leaving Hawk's ship unscathed. A collective gasp went up from the bridge crew. They had just witnessed the birth of a new era in defensive technology. On the station, Cox finally subdued the last Purist agent, just as Zalvor was about to voice his concerns about the peace agreement. The human diplomat straightened his uniform, hiding any signs of the recent struggle, and returned to the conference chamber. At that moment, Major Steele's voice crackled over the comm. General Cox, Admiral Hawk, we've secured the Purist ship, transmitting evidence of their plot now. As the data flooded in, exposing the full extent of the Purist conspiracy, the atmosphere in the conference chamber shifted dramatically. The Zenithian delegates, shocked by the revelation, rallied behind Zalvor's moderate faction. Zalvor, his earlier hesitation replaced by firm perseverance, stepped forward to sign the ceasefire agreement. Let this be the first step towards a new era of peace and cooperation between our peoples, he declared. As the delegates celebrated this historic moment, Cox exchanged a weary but satisfied glance with Ambassador Zorn. They had averted disaster, but both knew that the real work of building lasting peace was only just beginning. Outside the station, the Thunderchild stood vigil, a symbol of humanity's newfound power and the complex challenges that lay ahead in the vast, ever-changing cosmos. The ink on the ceasefire agreement had barely dried when alarms blared across Starpoint Station. Admiral Hawk rushed to the command center, his face etched with concern. "Report!" he barked as he entered. A young ensign looked up from her console, eyes wide. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational fluctuations in multiple star systems. Ships are being pulled off course. Some have disappeared entirely." Hawk's brow furrowed. "Get me General Cox and Dr. Zara, now." Within minutes, Cox and Zara joined Hawk in a secure briefing room. Zara's hands trembled as she pulled up a holographic display of the affected systems. "It's the artifacts," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're activating, creating subspace distortions on a scale I've never seen before." Cox leaned forward, studying the display. "How widespread is this?" "It's happening across at least a dozen systems," Zara replied, "and it's spreading." Hawk's heart made. "We need to act fast. If we don't find a way to shut these things down, we could be looking at the collapse of interstellar travel as we know it." Cox nodded, his mind racing. "We need a joint task force. Humans, Arcturians, Zenithians. We're all in this together now." Within hours, Cox found himself addressing a hastily assembled council of representatives from all three species. The tension in the room was palpable, old enmities barely concealed beneath a veneer of diplomacy. Distinguished delegates, Cox began, his voice steady despite the stakes. We face a threat that endangers us all. These artifacts, remnants of an ancient civilization, have the power to tear our worlds apart. We must set aside our differences and work together if we hope to survive. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. An Arcturian delegate, his crystalline form shimmering with hardly restrained energy, spoke up. And why should we trust you, human? How do we know this isn't some ploy to gain an advantage over us? Before Cox could respond, Zalvor, the moderate Zenithian leader, rose to his feet. Because we have no choice, he said firmly. Look at the data. Our worlds are already feeling the effects. If we do not act together, we will surely perish separately. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, the logic of cooperation won out. A joint task force was formed, with Admiral Hawk at its head. Weeks later, Hawk stood on the bridge of the newly christened Unity, a technological marvel that combined the best each species had to offer. The ship hummed with power as it prepared for its maiden voyage. All systems ready, Admiral, reported his an Arcturian named Xylos. Hawk nodded, his eyes fixed on the monitor. Take us out, Helm. Set course for the galactic core. As the Unity leapt into hyperspace, Hawk couldn't help but marvel at how quickly everything had changed. Mere months ago, these species had been at each other's throats. Now, they were embarking on a mission to save all of the galaxy together. The journey to the core was fraught with danger. Spatial rifts tore at the Unity's hull, forcing the crew to make constant repairs. Time dilation effects wreaked havoc with the ship's personnel, causing some to age rapidly, while others regressed to childhood. During one particularly harrowing encounter with a subspace vortex, Major Marcus Steele found himself leading a diverse team of specialists on a desperate spacewalk to realign the ship's deflector array. "Watch your tether, Zhang!" Steele called out as they maneuvered around the ship's exterior. The vortex loomed before them, a swirling mass of destructive energy that threatened to tear the Unity apart. Zhang, now fully recovered from her earlier injury, gave a thumbs up. Beside her, a Zenithian engineer named Kraz worked furiously to recalibrate the array. "We're running out of time," Kraz growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Steele gritted his teeth, pushing aside the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "We can do this, together." Working in perfect synchronization, the team managed to realign the array just as the vortex reached its peak intensity. The Unity shuddered but held together, its crew united in their relief. As they re-entered the ship, Steele looked at his team, human, Arcturian, and Zenithian alike, and felt a surge of pride. They had faced the impossible together and emerged victorious. Months into their journey, the Unity finally reached its destination. The galactic core loomed before them, a swirling mass of stars and cosmic energy. And there, at its heart, they found it. An ancient space station of staggering proportions. Dr. Zara's eyes widened as she studied the readings. "It's incredible," she breathed. "This station, it's the control hub for all the artifacts we've encountered." As the Unity docked with the station, Cox led a boarding party into its cavernous interior. The air was thick with anticipation as they made their way to the central control room. What they found there would change the course of galactic history forever.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.